All right, guys, we got some news and some crypto discussion. Let's go with the crypto discussion first. Bitcoin is over 29K, 0.2K, and it's about at the same place where it pumped because of the fake news. It did drop after the fake news, but now it's regained 29K and may keep going up. Why is that? It was fake news after all. The ETF has not actually been approved. And, the news was the ETF has been approved. So why is it regaining those values and why I think it might actually go higher? It's because markets are always forward looking. And even though the ETF has not been approved, everyone knows it's going to be approved very, very shortly. So no one wants to sell. Like the SEC is actively working with Grayscale, actively working with Fidelity, and actively working with BlackRock right now to maybe iron some things out. And also, all three have actually refiled amended ETFs recently, which means like they're basically getting everything in line with SEC expectations, which means eventually they're going to get accepted maybe within a month or two, like definitely by January 10th, because like pretty much every single big analyst has said that there's like a 95% chance now that they'll actually get accepted before January 10th. So there's a pretty good chance it actually comes this year. That's why markets are actually staying at 29K, because they actually think it will happen by the end of this year or at the beginning of next year, and they can't tell when it's actually going to happen. So they don't actually want to sell out. And they do know that there's a substantial amount of demand for Bitcoin when this does happen, and they don't want to miss out on it. I think a lot of them are actually holding for the long term. You see GBTC's discount going straight down, even though they have like problems with GBT, they have problems with like DCG and Genesis, which essentially owns Grayscale. Now, I don't think that's a big problem because they can just sell it to someone else. They're not going to take apart the fund right now. They'll either divest it to someone else or the company will actually survive. I'm not exactly sure how that deal with Gemini is actually going to go right now, but that doesn't really affect the ETF situation in any specific way. I think after Grayscale won the case, there was an unspoken but very, very big upward buy pressure on Bitcoin at this point. And that's because everyone knew the ETF was completely unavoidable right now. All the predictions of maybe 6 months to a year for an ETF went to 3 to 6 months. And recently, the predictions have shrunken to within 3 months. And these are from insiders and analysts who know the industry inside and out. So they actually have a lot of leeway and a lot of pull in terms of what the market actually thinks. And I do actually think like BlackRock and co have actually been given hints. Even though BlackRock was the one that broke the news that piece of iShares ETF was being approved was fake news, they've been giving other hints that it's very, very close. So yes, someone did make up the news, but the thing is BlackRock has been giving hints that maybe it's not so fake after all, and we know it's going to be approved soon, we just don't exactly know the date. And because markets are always forward-looking, they're going to see that and they're going to react. So I wouldn't actually expect that much of a pullback. The only thing that could pull us back is Jerome Powell announcing interest rate hikes. Those would actually be, sometime in November. But the thing is, based on his current speech, he said, we need to maintain the current direction. Americans are still spending too much money, but he didn't actually reference any interest rate hikes. So many market analysts are saying that they will not hike in November. And if they don't hike in November, they're less likely to hike in December. So I think the expectation is that right now, I think it's 50-50, but maybe the markets are already thinking that he won't actually do a rate hike in November. And if he doesn't, that's probably the end of the rate hikes. Now, he's going to keep the rates high for a very, very long time, probably at least another 6 months, if not 8 months or so. But I think in the second half of 2024, he's going to start taking them down. But as long as he doesn't raise the rates anymore, I do think that things will actually stabilize and people will stop panicking. Yes, the long-term bonds are going to start to come down, and that will actually make crypto look more attractive to the average investor. So people are actually looking at Jerome Powell's speech too. Yes, there was some crazy dude that was like some crazy people that were protesting while Jerome Powell was speaking, and he had to be escorted off the premises because he made a lot of people mad because he basically said Americans haven't felt enough pain, and he wants higher interest rates for a longer period of time. And obviously a lot of people don't really like that because that's definitely hurting some people, especially like, businesses that actually want a loan. He also wants to slow down the labor market and make people like lose jobs. Obviously people are not interested in that as well. So there's a lot of reasons why people would actually be mad at Jerome Powell. But none of those things really hurt crypto all that much. Crypto is sailing through, and crypto really won't be affected that much by the government shutdown, because if the government shuts down, they can't actually make bad legislation against crypto. And if government departments shut down, maybe the SEC will shut down too, because remember, the SEC is actually a branch of government. And if they shut down, they can't do anything. So if funding for the SEC runs out, maybe they can't really harass any more crypto companies. I'm not exactly sure how that works. And maybe the SEC is actually looking at maybe approving a Bitcoin ETF before the whole shutdown happens. Because they got, I think, like 28 days to actually avoid a shutdown. But if they don't avoid a shutdown, maybe Gary Gensler and the SEC is like, oh, this is inevitable. Let's just approve this before it all shuts down. And that's a real possibility as well. So those are the reasons probably why Bitcoin is actually holding the line right now and not retracing after the fake news. The other news I have is Aptos has crashed, and on its first anniversary, which is really bad. I think it's pretty devastating to Aptos that it actually crashed. I don't know if it'll be like critical or like, a headshot for Aptos. But remember, one of the big projects on Aptos that switched over to Aptos from Solana, Chingari, like basically said the reason they switched over to Aptos was because Aptos was more dependable and Solana went down too much. So now that Aptos has gone down, maybe they'll think twice and move somewhere else. Maybe they'll move back to Solana. I'm not really sure. I think the outage was for like 5 hours, but that's a decent amount of outage. So like the blockchain suffered a major outage among its first birthday celebration, and crypto exchanges have suspended APT deposits and withdrawals. The blockchain has actually announced the resumption of operations, but it is not a good look for Aptos if your blockchain actually goes down during your birthday party operations. So I'm going to have to downgrade Aptos like one tier on my list, because with Chingari and with some of their other partnerships, they were looking really, really, really good. But this downtime, just like I downgraded Solana several times because they had several downtimes, I got to at least downgrade Aptos once for one downtime. Maybe they'll get that back after like half a year or so of like not being down. But remember, Aptos is not an old chain. It's a fairly new chain. And having a foobar during your first anniversary where everyone can see, and having one of your major projects on your chain basically say they switched over to your chain because the other chain was unreliable and they went down all the time, is definitely not a good look. So like the Move language-based blockchain, which boasts of providing the most scalable and secure network in crypto market, experienced a major outage. And of course, that was very, very disruptive. So it impacted the network, and it halted at block 104,621,314. The outage disrupted transaction processing on the blockchain, and of course, users could not complete transactions for a 5-hour period. So no blockchain obviously is invincible. I'm not exactly sure what caused this outage, but they did at least get it fixed. Of course, like Upbit and OKX did halt APT transactions. So, there will be somewhat of a shockwave through Aptos. I think they will survive through this, but maybe they won't have as much trust as they did because, shutdowns are always bad. And they got to be very careful not to go down again. If they have another second shutdown, I have to downgrade them several more tiers because one shutdown could be just like a one-time thing, foobar thing, but multiple shutdowns, that really does not look good for your chain. So they got to be very, very careful and walk a fine line to make sure that this doesn't happen again, especially on another big celebration event like their birthday celebration. So Aptos right now, I'm a little bit queasy on. I used to be very, very bullish on it before, but I'm a little bit uneasy with this FUBAR during their 1 year anniversary. Although the shutdown wasn't a couple of days or weeks or months, 5 hours is still a lot of blocks that are not being processed. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.